As was mentioned, Hoshana Raba is a very special night and a very special day. And the reason that it's so special, the Zohar HaKodesh tells us in Parshas Tzav, B'yoyma shvi'ah d'chag, on the seventh day of the holiday of Sukkah, Hisiyuma Dedina, tonight and tomorrow morning, that's the final seal, the final judgment is given tonight and tomorrow for the world. Upiskin nafkin mibei malka. And the final seal, the final note is given from the king. So tonight is really the end before Hashem decides what is actually going to happen, not only to all of us, but to everybody in the world. And so therefore, tomorrow, as was mentioned, there's going to be many, many extra tefillahs. There are many, many people throughout the world that stay up a whole night. As many of you will be here throughout for the shiurim, I remember one of the greatest memories of my life is when I was this night, Hoshana Raba, I went to the Kaisel Maravi. I will never forget it because I knew very well that tomorrow morning, Hoshana Raba, there would be close to 15,000 people at the Kaisel. And I wanted to be right up front. So I came the night before, well before midnight, and I took a chair and I was sitting right in front of the Kaisel. And I'll tell you an interesting thing. What happened is there are many, many people tonight who read, they go to shul and they read from the beginning of Devarim, the Chumash Devarim, till the end. And I will never forget, I came to the Parsha, I was saying it in my art scroll Chumash, trying to understand the meaning of every word. And I came to the Parsha Veschanon. Veschanon is the second Parsha in Devarim, and it tells how Moshe Rabbeinu is begging, please, please, let me come to Eretz Yisrael. And Hashem says, don't pray to me anymore. I'm not letting you go. And the truth is, I started crying. I couldn't stop crying for Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm sitting here at the Kaisel. I've been to Eretz Yisrael 20 times. I'm sure many of you have been there many, many times. And here, the Rabbi of Klal Yisrael, he can't be at the Kaisel. He's never going to be in Eretz Yisrael until Mashiach comes. It was so sad for me, and I remember that this is the night of that anniversary of my feeling of Hoshana Raba at the Kaisel, the night before everybody began to daven. But there were thousands of people there all night. So tonight, many people say Tehillim. Many people learn all night, and that's why we have this gathering here tonight. You know, the four species, the Daled Minim that we use throughout Sukkot, we all know that they represent different parts of the body. The Esrig, we know, represents the heart. The Lulav represents the spine. The Hadassim represent the eyes. And the Aravas represent the mouth. And I'll tell you what I thought of. Tomorrow, when we hold the Hoshanas, that's all the Aravas. We're taking a whole bunch of Aravas, we put it together. Aravas is the mouth. So tomorrow, we have to think about what are we going to improve with our mouth. And that's why it occurred to me, only because I had to prepare this talk. I never thought about it before. As was mentioned before, who is the guest tonight in the Sukkah? That's David HaMelech. What did David HaMelech write? Tehillim, right? That's why many, many people say the whole Tehillim on Hoshana Raba. So tonight, we're talking about the Aravos, right? The Aravos are the things that we're going to hold tomorrow in Tefillah. Aravos represents the mouth. Tonight, the guest is David. David wrote Tehillim. So I'll tell you what I think that every one of us tonight should bli neder, be makabel. Let's undertake from now on that not one day is going to go by without us saying Tehillim. Now, I would never, ever ask you to do anything that I don't do myself. So let me tell you what I do. You don't have to do this. But I think every one of us tonight, if we came Hoshana Raba, the night where David HaMelech is the guest, the day and the night when people say the whole Tehillim, from now on, if you never said Tehillim before, say one parak a day, one chapter a day. Say 2 chapters a day. But not one day should go by without us saying Tehillim, because Tehillim is that connection to Hashem. What I do is I like to say 5 a day, because there's 30 days in the month. 5 times 30 is 150. So like this, I finish it once a month. Baruch Hashem, I've been doing it for years. I don't want to say how many years. It shouldn't be an ayin hara. But I'm just telling you, you feel so good every time I mark down in my Tehillim that this month I finished it. This month I finished it. It's very, very special. So tonight, bli neder, if you can, before you go to sleep, or tomorrow before Yontif, make sure you say at least one kapitel. And I want to give all of us a blessing, every one of us that's going to be makabel, that there's one phrase in the first perek in Tehillim that I love, and that's my bracha to all of us. V'chol asher yaseh yatzliach. Everything that you do is going to be successful. Who doesn't want to say a perek like that? Let's say it tonight. Say that perek, say that posik, and just know v'chol asher yaseh yatzliach. Everything that you do is going to be successful. You know, there's a very interesting question, and the previous speaker touched on it before. Very interesting. If tonight is the final seal of the din, so between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're all very, very serious, right? So, you know, Aseret Yimei Tshuva, then we come to Yom Kippur. So we can understand that those are the days of judgment. But why is there like a separation between Yom Kippur and Hoshana Raba? And it seems to be a very happy time. Who doesn't love Sukkahs? Who doesn't love, you know, the lulav and the esrog and the Sukkah decorations? It's such a happy time. Why is that in the middle? And again, this is a question that I saw in a sefer that Rabbi David Hofstadter, a tremendous Talmud Chacham, somebody who runs a wonderful organization, Dirshu, around the world. And you know something? He gives a teretz, but I want to tell you what I thought of. You know, just a few weeks ago, all of us experienced the solar eclipse, right? Everybody knows what happened from the West Coast in Oregon to the East Coast in South Carolina. There was like a whole row across America where it became dark in the middle of the day, and everybody said the moon covered the sun. And nobody would dare look at the sun except President Trump, which could answer a lot of questions about him, but whatever. That's not this discussion. But whatever, none of us would look at the sun. Everybody bought those glasses. And, you know, not to look at the sun when the moon was covering it, because otherwise it could be dangerous for the retina. And I'll tell you the truth, I was looking in all the Jewish newspapers and the Jewish magazines. I wanted to see, why did God make it in our generation? Why did God make it right before Elul? There's got to be a reason. Everything that happens for a reason. Everything. Hashem is doing it so that we should learn something from it. And I'm telling you, I didn't see anything that spoke to me. And so I just was thinking about it. And then something occurred to me. You know something? It's absolutely ridiculous what everybody was saying, that the moon could cover the sun. The moon can't cover the sun. Do you know how many times the sun is bigger than the moon? I don't know if you know this. 400 times bigger than the moon is the sun. The moon is so insignificant compared to the sun. How in the world could anybody say that the moon covered the sun? So I'll tell you what happened. The moon didn't cover the sun. You know what happened? See, all of you know this is a baseball, right? Now, this baseball is really so insignificant, unless Aaron Judge is hitting it, but besides. But this baseball is really insignificant, and all of you are bigger and more important than this baseball. But watch what happens when I bring it close to my eye. I can't see anyone, even Yaniv Me'irov. You know why? Because when you bring something close to your eye that's insignificant, you can't see the big picture. And that's what happened. The moon didn't cover the sun. The moon blocked our vision. We allowed the moon to come into that position so that it blocked our vision and we couldn't see the sun. Now, I want to tell you a pasuk. Now, when I first saw this pasuk, I absolutely went crazy. I could not believe it. Listen to this pasuk in Malachi Gimel, pasuk Chaf. It says like this. At the end of time, V'zor cholachem yirei shemi, Hashem says, I'm going to shine a sun. It's a Malachi Gimel, pasuk Chaf. To all those who fear me, Shemesh, I'm going to give you a son, tzedakah, a righteous son. And the Radak says, everybody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to be healed. Anybody who's sick will be healed. Nobody will get sick. Umarpe bichnofeha. There will be healing in the wings of that son. Everybody will have a happy heart. And if that's the case, we all want to see that son. How are we going to see that son if we lock and allow things that are insignificant to cover our eyes, to cover our vision, then we can't get to that sun. And I'll tell you a great story. I have friends that were and are identical twins. They grew up in Wanto, Long Island. They grew up not religious, Steve and Mitch Barnett. Now, today, Steve is Simcha and Mitch is Michael. But when they were young, they were not religious, and everything was the same, the exact same. Same hobbies, same friends, same school, same workplace, everything. And you know what they love to do? They love to go bike riding all over the world. And so they were members of bike clubs. And one day, Simcha, after he became religious, he told me this story. He was sitting in my house. It was Pesach morning after davening. I had invited him for Kiddush. And he said, you know what we once did? We once went to New Zealand. Now, I don't know if you know the layout of New Zealand, and maybe when Hidabrut shows this talk, they'll give you a layout of it. But there's the North Island, there's a body of water called the Cook Strait, and then there's the South Island. And he told me that they flew from America to the North Island, everybody with all their bike gear and knapsacks and everything. They took a ferry over the Cook Strait, and then they went to the South Island. And Simcha told me that the South Island, the first hill that they had to climb was almost like a straight wall. It was so difficult. Their legs were killing them. They couldn't get up that hill. And then he noticed they were going single file, so the guy ahead of him opened up his knapsack, threw out a heavy book, threw out a pliers, threw out a crowbar, all the things that were making the trip heavy. And then, once it was lighter, then they were able to get up to that mountain. And Simcha Barnett told me an amazing thing. He said, when I became religious, when I became a Baal Tshuva, I realized that bike ride was the bike ride of a Baal Tshuva. If somebody wants to get to the top of the spiritual mountain, oh, thank you so much. If somebody wants to get to the top of the spiritual mountain, then you've been carrying a lot of baggage. You got to get rid of that baggage in order to get to the top of that mountain. I couldn't get over that. That was such a great allegory, such a great mashal. If you want to get to the top of the spiritual mountain, you got to get rid of the baggage. So after he told this to me, about an hour later, my son comes home from another shul where he was davening. And I said to him, did you hear what Simcha said? This bike ride is the ride of the Baal Tshuva. He said, it's a posik. I said, what posik? He said, David HaMelech wrote in Tehillim. Listen to this. Mi yala, this is in Tehillim Chav Daled Posik Gimel and Dal. Mi yala b'har Hashem. Who's the one who wants to go up to the top of the spiritual mountain? Mi yakum b'mkoim kachoy. What does it say next? That's right. Nechi chapayim. You got to get rid of the baggage. I went crazy. I couldn't believe it. That's what David HaMelech is telling us. You want to get to the top of the spiritual mountain? Neki chapayim, you got to get rid of that baggage. I quickly looked up the wonderful sefer on Tehillim called Migdash Ma'at, and he tells us that the Oilas Ephraim, the Klei Yaka, says something fabulous. How do you say the word load in Hebrew? A masa, right? How do you spell masa? Mem, sin, aleph. Listen to what he says. Mem is mamoin, money. Sin is simlois, clothing. Aleph is oichel, food. If all your life you're just interested in making so much money and dressing the best and eating the best restaurants, the best food, you're not making it up to the top of the mountain. We all need food, we all need clothes, we all need money. But that's not what life is all about. Because if money, food, and clothes are what you're interested, you're blocking your vision to what's important in life. That's why we have these happy days in between before the final day. You know why? Because part of being a Yid is not only fasting, is not only being in Shul Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. How do you spend your happy time? How many people this past Yom Tov, did you really enjoy sitting in the Sukkah? I'll tell you what my feeling is in the Sukkah. I do everything that I possibly can in the Sukkah. Just to sit and read, no matter what. You're embraced. I feel so embraced by the walls as if Hashem is hugging me. I look up to the Chazaq. I feel Hashem is protecting me. And of course you're supposed to have fun in other ways as well. But you have to love doing mitzvahs. I want to tell you a great story. Now tonight is a very difficult night for me. And I'll tell you why. See, my mother, who was a widow for 40 long years, died 11 years ago at the beginning of Chol Hamoed Sukkos. So I just had yurtzeit for her. Now my father died, it's hard for me to believe, 51 years ago. As I told you, my mother he died Shmini Atzeres. So I've got Yortzeit again, the day after Hoshana Raba. So I'm right between the Yortzeits of my mother, who died 11 years ago, and my father, who died 51 years ago. And it's so unbelievable. Both times we sat Shiva, we started right after Yontif, right after Sukkah. So I want to tell you a story about my mother, who I was very close to, and until I heard the story, I thought I knew everything about her. I couldn't imagine that there was anything that anybody could tell me about my mother that I didn't know. But 2 years ago, my nephew, Hudi Gutman from Lakewood, who teaches in a school in Edison, New Jersey, called me up and he said, Uncle Paysach, I want to tell you something about your mother that you don't know. I said, Hudi, that's ridiculous. Nobody knows anything about my mother that I don't know. He said, Uncle Paysach, I'm telling you, I was with her the last day of her life, which was the second day of Sukkah. She died right after Yontif, right at the beginning of Chol Hamoed. I said, Hudi, what are you talking about? He says, you know I was with her in Paul Kimball Hospital. I said, yeah, I remember that. He said, I want to tell you what happened the last morning of her life. She wasn't talking anymore. She wasn't talking for a few days. And I came in, it was the second day of Sukkot, and I said to her, Bubby, I've got the lulav and esrog. Would you like to make the bracha? And we'll shake the lulav. And she didn't respond. So he said, I figured that she wouldn't respond, but I spoke to her anyway. And I said to her, Bubby, here, listen, I'm going to give you the lulav and esrog, and I'm going to put my fingers around your fingers, and you just listen to me. We'll say the bracha together, and we'll shake the lulav and esrog. And he says, and that's exactly what we did. We shook the lulav and the esrog. I made the bracha. I wasn't sure if she understood that I made the bracha. I wasn't sure if she realized what was going on. But then I tried to take away the lulav and the esrog, and she wouldn't give it to me. She was holding on to it very tight. And I said to her, Bubby, we did the mitzvah already. She didn't say anything. She just held on to it. And my nephew said to me, when I saw that she didn't want to leave go, so I took my hands away and I let her hold it herself. And as soon as she held it herself, she took it to her lips, she kissed the lulav, she kissed the esrog, and she gave it back to me. He said I almost fainted. That meant she knew what was going on. I thought she didn't know what was going on, but she knew, obviously. She knew this was a davar mitzvah. She knew this was a dvar mitzvah, and she kissed it. But I never understood why she kissed it, so I never told you the story. Now, I knew that I always kissed a lulav and esrog because I saw my mother do it. I didn't know why she did it, but she did it, so I did it. He said, but today I was teaching the kids in my class. This was right before Pesach, he told me this, 2 years ago. Now look it up, you will not believe. In the Orach Chaim and Be'er Heitev, Siman Tov, Ayin Zayin, Sifkot and Aleph. Listen to what he says. The Be'er Heitev writes, and the Mishnah Brewing visiting it as well. Kosav Shloah HaKodesh, the Shloah HaKodesh writes, Ra'isi, I saw, Mibnei Aliyah, from the holy people, Shehoyu Menashkin HaMatzos v'HaMorar. They used to kiss the matzahs and the morah. You ever kiss a matzah in your life? After he showed me this, I kissed matzah. I can't say I kissed the morah, but I kissed the matzah. V'chein sukkah. Listen to this. Tonight when you go home, or tomorrow when you're in sukkah, v'chein sukkah, you're supposed to kiss the sukkah b'chnisasai u'b'yitziasai. When you go in and you go out, you kiss it like you kiss a mezuzah. V'chein dalad minim shebalulav. Also the dalad minim. Every time you use the lulav and the esrog, you kiss them. And that's what he says. Why? You love the mitzvah. Fortunate are those who serve Hashem b'simcha. Tomorrow you still got the chance. How could anybody miss kissing the lulav and the esrog? And you know something? Do it in front of your children. Do it in front of your grandchildren. So they'll know how you love the mitzvah. As I told you, I always kissed the lulav and the esrog. I didn't know why. I guarantee you my mother didn't know this. But she knew it was a holy thing. She knew that her mitzvahs was so precious to her. And that's why we have these happy days in the middle. Hashem wants to see what's precious to you. Are you staying up to watch the game till 12 o'clock at night? You wouldn't miss that for anything, right? What in the world is everybody going to do tomorrow night? But okay, we'll worry about that, right? But to kiss a lulav and an esrog and a sukkah, I'll tell you another story about somebody who loved mitzvahs. It's just absolutely amazing. A number of years ago, I was on the way to Eretz Yisrael. It was I don't know, it was in the 70s or whatever. And what happened was, on the plane, There was a man by the name of Shlomo Jacobowitz, Rabbi Shlomo Jacobowitz. Some of you may know Rabbi Emanuel Jacobowitz was the chief rabbi of England. This is his brother who was a dean of schools, a whole network of schools in Toronto called Eitz Chaim. And so Eitz Chaim had thousands of kids over the years, and he was the dean. So when I saw him on the plane, I said to him, you know, you got to tell me something about your father. Because your father had to be so special to have a child like you, who's the dean of so many kids, and your brother is chief rabbi of England. Tell me something special about your father. Listen to what he said. He said, I want to tell you a story that happened in October 1938. Okay? October 1938. That was a week before Kristallnacht, which happened in November 1938. He said, my father loved doing the mitzvah of Sukkah. And any apartment that we ever moved to, the first thing he wanted to see, where could he build a sukkah? Now, we lived on the 3rd floor, he said, and the guards, the SS guards were already marching through the streets in Germany. Everybody was afraid to build a sukkah, because if they saw your sukkah on your porch, they could come, not only break it, they could take you to jail, lose your job, who knows what they could do. Now, we had on our porch, which faced the front street, a retaining wall. And my father measured it. Now, listen to this. Who would ever think, you know what the first Mishnah in Sukkah says? The first Mishnah in Sukkah, who would ever, when you learn this, you think like, whoever's going to need this? The highest, the lowest Sukkah that you're allowed to build has to be 40 inches high. That's about what this is right here, right? From here to the floor. Could you imagine? 40 inches. So my father, he says, Rabbi Yoel Jacobowitz, he goes outside, he measures, that wall was 44 inches high so that nobody should fall off. You know what he did? He built a sukkah 40 inches high, a sukkah 40 inches high, put 2 inches of schach on it, and we sat in the sukkah every single meal. We sat on pillows, on the floor, and we didn't miss one meal. That's somebody who loves a mitzvah. And he said, of course, we didn't sing Zmiris, right? But he once sent me, years later, he sent me a picture of the apartment building. Of course, when you're looking up, and, you know, it's 44 inches, and the sukkah is 40 inches, and 42 with schach, you can't see it. But he was moiser nefesh for the mitzvah. So I'll tell you what I told him. In L'David Ori, which we still are saying, till Shmini Atzeres, it says like this, in Tehillim Chav Zayin Pasuk Hey, Ki yitzbeneni b'sukkah, when you conceal me in your shelter, in your sukkah, b'yoyim ra'ah, Yastireni. In the day of evil, I will conceal you. You too will be concealed. B'seisa ohaloi. That's not the exact touch in the pasuk, but I believe that whole family was saved. The whole Jacobowitz family was saved. Perhaps they were saved because they felt protected in the sukkah. They wanted to have the protection of the sukkah. Even in the most difficult times, Hashem said, I'll take care of you. I'm going to protect you in the difficult times. And that's an incredible thing. Can you imagine how the Jacobowitz family observes the mitzvah of Sukkah? Because they saw how their father and grandfather enjoyed the mitzvah. That's why we have these happy days between Yom Kippur and Hoshana Raba. You know why? Hashem wants to see what's your happiness. What do you consider important in life? What brings a smile to your face? What are you proud to do? So tonight, as we said before, is Siyuma. That's the end. That's the final seal, or the final note. As the Zohar says in Parashat Tzav, as we said, Siyuma de Dina de Alma. So how are we going to get it? How are we going to get a great year? I'll tell you. The Chavetz Chaim tells us something amazing. The Chavetz Chaim in the Sefer Avos Chesed tells us, Uma'oid tzarech lizohar. A person has to be very careful. From tonight on, if it's still possible. Not one day should go by for every man, woman, and child here that you don't do a chesed for somebody else. You don't do a kind deed for somebody else. Now, I'm not talking husbands for wives, wives for husbands. That you got to do if you know what's good for you. I'm talking about out of the house. So people say, oh, yeah, charity begins at home. Yeah, but you don't become a Baal Chesed because you made coffee for your spouse. You have to train yourself not to let one day go by without a chesed. Every day. And write it down. Keep a notebook. Even if you do 10 things, don't write down 10 things. Write down one thing. You'll see after 40 days you're going to become a different person. Great stuff is going to happen to you. You know why? Because David HaMelech, the guest for tonight, writes, Hashem tzilcha, God is your shadow. You do for others, others do for you. And the Chavetz Chaim says, not only doing a chesed, but learning every day. That goes for women too. Of course, chas v'shalom, a woman's not going to learn the daf. She's not learning Gemara. But there's Chumash, there's Tanakh, there's Halacha, there's Musar. There's so much that you could learn. And so much that a woman has to know. Every day you got to learn something. And I'll tell you the truth. You go online today between TorahAnytime.com and Chazaq and Hidaprut, you got enough learning till Mashiach comes. Thousands of shiurim, millions of hours of learning through TorahAnytime.com, Chazaq and Hidaprut, from the three greatest organizations of Klal Yisrael. And one of the heroes is back there, Yaniv Meirov, who deserves a big round of applause. And Chaim Gerber and Yosef Davis and all these tzaddikim who spend hours and hours making sure that by tomorrow, this year is going to be in Chile and Mexico and Australia, all over the place. So we can learn every day, and we can do chesed every day. But now I want to tell you something frightening. And this is the showstopper. This is where it makes all the difference. Listen what the Chofetz Chaim writes in Avas Chesed, Chelik Sheni Perek Dalet. Kisha b'Torah b'lvad. If somebody only learns Torah, but he doesn't do favors the way he's supposed to, then he's not going to get God's favor. Torah is not enough. Torah is very important, obviously. But it has to be Torah with chesed. And he writes, because what's going to happen, chas v'shalom, if chas v'shalom you have a certain tzara, there could be a judgment against us. How are we going to get rid of that judgment? We want God's chesed. We want God's favor. We got to make up tonight. From tonight on, we're going to start doing favors. If you don't get home too late, call a grandmother that you haven't spoken to in 6 years. Or call a family member, somebody that's stuck, can't get out. If there's a single mother tomorrow, whether she's divorced or a widow, and she's got kids at home, you go shopping, call her and say, I'm in the store, let me get you something. Tell me what you need, you don't have to go out. Take a boy who's either from a broken family on Simchas Torah. So I just want to end with this story. I told you a beautiful story about my mother, whose yahrzeit was just 2 days ago. I want to tell you one of the greatest stories about my father that I find so inspirational, because his yahrzeit is Shmini Atzeres. Many of you know that I've written a series of books called the Maggid series. The Maggid Speaks, Around the Maggid's Table. The most recent one is Illuminations of the Maggid. And it all started because the Maggid of Yerushalayim, many years ago, in 1965, came to America. Now, my father had never met Rav Shalom Shadron, who was the Maggid of Yerushalayim, but when he heard that he was coming, he decided that he's got to stay in our home. I said, Pa, you don't even know him. He doesn't know you. How are you going to get him to stay in your house? He says, don't worry. My father took his own bed, if you could believe it, put it upstairs in the 3rd floor in our home, and put a second bed there because he knew he was probably going to come with somebody else. And we go to the airport. And we come to the airport, and Rabbi Shalom Shadron, I recognize him because I had been in Israel that summer, and he comes off the plane together with Rabbi Yisrael Grossman, and we walk over to him, and Rabbi Porish, who was there from the Agudah, says to a fellow Rafi Brunner, who are these people? He said, no, I was by there for Shabbos. They would like Rabbi Shalom Shadron to be there. So he said, oh, could you eat there? He said, yeah, I was there. They're wonderful people. You could be. He says, you know, it's so good that they could be there because the apartment that we were supposed to have for them in Borough Park, it was given to somebody else because they were delayed in their trip by a day because of weather. So the guy got rid of it. So we need him to stay for a day or two. Okay, I'll never forget. I was there. My brothers were there. My father was there. My grandfather was there to go greet a person who he never saw before because he knew he was a tzaddik, he was a maggid, he was a storyteller, and a wonderful person. We're on the way home. I remember we were driving from Kennedy on the Varenka Expressway. My father says to Rabbi Shalom Shadron, he says, listen, you're coming to our home. I just want you to know that my home is your home. Any chumrah, any stringency that you have, we will abide by. You are taking over our home. They looked at him and said, you don't know me? Why are you doing this? He said, that's what we want. You're our guest and you take over. Okay, we come into the house and my father shows him, the whole house. He had built an extra room, a big base medrash alongside the house. Rabbi Shalom Shadron had never seen anything like this. And it was just incredible. And the two became, in 2 days, they became like brothers. Very, very close. Now, Rabbi Shvadron was staying in America at least 2 or 3 months. He ended up staying 6, but he thought he was going to stay 2 or 3. And he said to my father after 2 days, he said, why are you doing all this for me? And my father put on a tape recorder and showed him that my cousin, Chaim David Ackerman, had heard many, many shiurim and lectures from Rabbi Shvadron and sent it to us on cassette. And my father said, here, I have these cassettes. You don't know that they come to America, but we love them. And it wasn't even cassettes in those days. It was reel to reel, these little reel to reels. So Rabbi Shvadron says to my father, look, I like being here. I'm not going to go to Borough Park, but I've got to pay you rent. My father said, rent? I'm going to take rent from a tzaddik like you? He said, okay, then I'm leaving. I can't stay here 2-3 months without paying rent. So my father said, okay, good. I'll make a cheshbon. My wife and I will make a cheshbon. Now, the second part of the story I know from Rav Shalom Shvadron, not from my father. Rav Shalom told me years later. He said, the next day, your father came down, and now I knew that I wanted to stay here, he said. And I figured, you know what the price would be. I thought of range, and your father's price was so high, I couldn't believe it. How could he charge me that much? But now it's embarrassing. How was I going to say I don't want to pay? You know, like it's so embarrassing. So I paid whatever he wanted. And this went on for 6 months. Imagine that. He stayed there for 6 months. He traveled all around the country, but he always came back. I remember, again, Rav Shalom Shvadron wanted to go back by boat. He didn't want to go by plane. He said it was too quick to go from the Tumah of America to the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. He needed some time to thaw out. He wanted to go by boat. I remember we come into the cabin where Rav Shalom was going to be on that boat. My father takes an envelope and he gives it to Rabbi Shvadron. He said, what is this? He says, this is the money that you gave me. You don't think I was going to take money from you, do you? He said, these are the exact bills. I didn't even touch them. I didn't even spend it. Every penny that you ever gave me for rent, this is it. So Rabbi Shalom Shvadron said to my father, Rabbi Avram, he said, Rabbi Avram, I gotta ask you something. Why did you charge me such a high amount? You know what I thought of you? You know, I knew I wanted to stay. But when you gave me such a high amount, I couldn't believe. I thought that we were so close, and we are close. Why did you give me such a high amount? You know what my father told him? He said, because I knew that if you were paying a high amount and you felt you were paying a high amount, you would do anything you wanted in this house. See, if I had given you a low amount, you would feel, well, maybe I can't really do anything that I want. Like this, you could do anything you want because you were paying for it. At least you thought you were paying for it, but I wouldn't take a penny for you. That's chesed. In other words, he wasn't worried about his reputation, what the man would think of him. He wanted to make him feel so comfortable. And I'll just end by telling you this. It's hard to believe. But because he went back by boat, my father, who had never been to Eretz Yisrael and didn't even have a passport at that time, I remember Shabbos, we were sitting at the table, and he said to me, Mommy and I are going to Eretz Yisrael. We're going to meet Rab Shalom coming off the boat. And I'll never forget this. My father went, and of course he came to the house to meet Rebbe Shvadron in Yerushalayim. Then they had to go up to Haifa. And they went up to Haifa to meet Rab Shalom. Now my father was a very sensitive person, so he didn't want that Rab Shalom Shvadron came off the boat the first thing that he would see my father. So he let Rebbe Shvadron and the whole family go up to see him. And then Rebbe Shvadron said to Rab Shalom, he said, you know, there's somebody special here to see you. Your best friend came to see you. So Rabbi Shvadron said, that's impossible, because I left my best friend in America. And then my father came out, and of course they hugged and kissed. And unfortunately, when my father came home from that trip, that's when he got sick, and he passed away within a few months after that. But that relationship that we had with Rav Shalom Shvadron was cemented with that love and chesed that two great Jews had for each other. So I tell you all this because tonight is a night when we have to grow and we have to change and we can be better. Because the Jews are the greatest nation in the world and we are the greatest people in the world. And Hashem wants to do only good for us. And He wants to see us do chesed so He can do chesed for us. Hashem should bench each and every one of us. Everything that we do should be with atzlocha
Tomorrow, daven well, kiss the sukkah, kiss the mezuzah, of course, kiss the lulav, kiss the esrog, and kiss your kids, don't forget. And we should all have great hatzlacha and a wonderful din, and it should be a great year for Klal Yisrael. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for listening.